Welcome to English Story Path, where every story teaches you English, and every word brings you closer to success. Today we're sharing the true story of Thomas Edison, the boy they called too slow, who went on to light up the entire world. Learning English is not just about grammar and big words. It's about understanding people. It's about understanding life. It's about not giving up. That's why today, I want to tell you a true story. A story that has helped me learn English, and also helped me learn how to live better. It's the story of a man who failed many times, but never stopped trying. A man who changed the world. A man who had no special power except one. He believed in hard work. His name was Thomas Edison. But before he became famous, before the light bulb, before people called him a genius, he was just a little boy, curious, quiet, and often misunderstood. Let me take you back. Thomas Edison was born on February 11, 1847, in a small town in Ohio, America. His parents named him Thomas Alva Edison, but he was not a strong baby. In fact, many people thought he would not live long. He was often sick. He had trouble hearing, and later in life he became almost deaf. But even when he was very small, he was different. He didn't play much like the other kids. He was always thinking, always asking questions. Why is the sky blue? What makes fire burn? How do birds fly? His mother said he had a fire in his eyes, a light that showed he wanted to know everything. School troubles. When Thomas was 7 years old, his parents sent him to school. But school did not go well. The teacher said he asked too many questions. He didn't sit still. He didn't follow the lessons. He didn't learn like the other children. After only 3 months, the school said, "Your son is too slow. He can't learn." Can you believe that? Thomas Edison, the man who would later invent the light bulb, was told he was not smart enough to go to school. But here's where the story becomes powerful. His mother, Nancy Edison, did something amazing. She said, "If school can't teach my son, then I will." She took him out of school. She started teaching him at home. She gave him books. She let him read whatever he wanted. She answered his questions with love and patience, because she believed in him. And sometimes that's all a person needs. Someone to believe in them. Curious mind. At home, Thomas read books about science, machines, and electricity. He read simple books first, then more difficult ones. He didn't always understand the words, but he tried. He kept reading. He kept asking. Sometimes he read the same page 10 times. Not because he was slow, but because he wanted to really understand. Does that sound like you learning English? If yes, then you are just like Edison. You don't give up. And that is more important than being fast. The first experiment. One day, Thomas tried his first real experiment. He was still just a small boy. He had read in a science book that birds could fly because they ate special food. So what did Thomas do? He gave food to his pet bird, and then ate the same food himself, hoping he would be able to fly too. Of course, it didn't work. But that's not the point. The point is he tried. And even when people laughed at him, he smiled. He said, "Now I know one more thing that doesn't work." You see, Edison had already learned a secret. Failure is not bad. Failure is part of learning. That idea would become the heart of his whole life. A boy with a lab. As he grew older, Thomas became more and more interested in science. He didn't have much money, but he saved every coin. He bought small tools, old books, broken machines, and he built his own little laboratory in the basement of his home. Imagine that. While other boys were playing outside, Thomas was mixing chemicals, heating metal, testing wires. He made mistakes. He burned his fingers. Sometimes he made big messes. But he was always learning, always experimenting, always thinking. When I read about Thomas Edison for the first time, I was trying to learn English. I didn't understand every word in the book. Sometimes I had to use a dictionary. Sometimes I had to guess. But the more I read about him, the more I felt inspired. because I saw myself in him. I also felt slow. I also made mistakes. I also had people tell me, "You can't do it." But Thomas Edison's story told me, you don't need to be the smartest. You just need to keep trying. So I kept learning English. And here I am today, sharing this story with you. And I hope you keep going too. Thomas Edison was still very young, but he already had a big dream. He wanted to become an inventor. But his family was poor. They couldn't give him more books or machines. They couldn't send him to college. So Edison decided to do something about it. He started working. Yes, at just 12 years old, he got his first job. He became a newspaper boy on a train. Every day, Thomas would ride the train between two cities in Michigan. He sold newspapers, snacks, candy, and fruit. But here's what made him different. He didn't waste time. When the train was moving, other boys laughed and played. But Edison, he read. He read science books. He read English books. He studied math. He asked questions. He even brought small science tools with him and set up a tiny laboratory inside the train. Can you believe that? Inside a moving train, between newspapers and apples, he was doing chemistry experiments. Once, one of his experiments caught fire. The conductor got angry and threw all his tools out of the train. But Edison didn't stop. He just smiled and said, "Now I'll be more careful next time." Thomas Edison never went to school again. But he was always learning. And do you know how? By reading, by trying, by failing, and by doing again. This is what people now call self-education. He didn't have YouTube. He didn't have a teacher. He didn't even have Google. All he had were books and his deep curiosity. That's why I say, if Edison could teach himself science and invention with only books in English, then we can also teach ourselves English with the tools we have today. You see, it's not about what you have. It's about how much you want to learn. One day, while working on the train, something happened that changed Edison's life forever. He saw a small boy playing near the train tracks. Suddenly, the boy slipped. A train was coming fast. Without thinking, Edison ran. He jumped. He pulled the boy away just in time. The boy's father saw everything. He was the station master, and he was so thankful that he wanted to give Edison a gift. But Edison didn't want money. He said, "Can you teach me how to use the telegraph?" Now remember, in those days, the telegraph was like the internet. It was used to send messages across the country. The man said yes. He taught Edison how to use the machine. And soon, Thomas became a skilled telegraph operator. He now had a real job, and also a deeper understanding of how machines worked. More importantly, he had found a new world to explore, electricity. In the next few years, Edison moved from city to city, always working, always learning. He worked during the day and read books at night. Sometimes he had no money. Sometimes he was hungry. Sometimes he slept on floors. But he didn't complain. He said, "Every job teaches me something." And he kept a small notebook with him to write down ideas, thoughts, and questions. That notebook later became the birthplace of many inventions. In 1869, Edison invented something simple, an improved machine to record stock prices. It worked better than the old ones. People were impressed. He sold it for $40,000. That was a huge amount at that time. He was only 22 years old. He finally had money. But what did he do with it? Did he buy a big house? No. Did he go on vacation? No. He used that money to build something special. His own invention laboratory. The invention factory. Edison moved to a place called Menlo Park, New Jersey. There, he opened the world's first invention workshop. A place where people could build new things every day. He hired smart workers. He bought machines. He filled the rooms with wires, chemicals, and tools. And then, he got to work. In the next few years, this place became a miracle house. So many ideas came from Menlo Park. The phonograph, a machine that plays sound, an improved telephone, an electric vote recorder, And yes, the light bulb. But wait, the light bulb didn't come easily. It took years. And hundreds of failures. We'll talk about that later in this video. When I read how Thomas Edison worked on trains, how he learned from life, how he used every little moment to grow, I felt something inside me, because I also didn't go to a perfect school. I also had to work hard. I also had to teach myself. And I'm still learning. Maybe you are too. So remember, you don't need a perfect life to learn. You just need a reason to keep going. If Edison could learn science on a moving train, you and I can learn English right here, right now. Keep going. Keep reading. Keep asking. Like Edison did. Have you ever tried something and failed? Then tried again and failed again? And maybe people laughed at you or said, "Why are you wasting your time?" If yes, then you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. Because Thomas Edison, the man who gave light to the world, failed more than 1,000 times. Yes, 1,000. Let me explain. In the late 1800s, people used candles, oil lamps, and gas lights to light their homes. But these were not safe. They caused fires. They made smoke. They didn't last long. People wanted something better, something brighter, something safer. Many scientists tried to create an electric light before Edison. Some made it work, but only for a few seconds. Or it cost too much money. Or it burned out quickly. Nobody had found the answer. So when Edison said, "I'm going to invent the electric light," people laughed. You? The man who left school. You? The boy who sold candy on a train. You think you're smarter than other scientists? Edison just smiled. He didn't argue. He went back to work. The light bulb was not just one simple thing. It had three main parts. A glass bulb, wires to carry electricity. A tiny piece called a filament, the part that glows. The problem was the filament. What could glow bright, but not burn too fast? That was the big question. So Edison and his team tried everything. They tested cotton, hair, paper, cardboard, bamboo, wood, metal wires, even the fibers from a palm tree. One by one they failed. The bulbs broke. The filaments burned out. The light died quickly. And yet, they didn't stop. I have not failed. One day, a reporter came to Edison's lab. He asked, "Mr. Edison, why are you still trying? You have failed 1,000 times. Do you know what Edison said? He said, "I have not failed 1,000 times. I have simply found 1,000 ways that do not work." That sentence changed my life. Because I realized, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the path to success. Edison didn't see failure as defeat. He saw it as information. Each time something didn't work, he learned something new. And that knowledge brought him closer to the answer. After testing more than 6,000 materials, Edison finally tried something different. A tiny thread of carbonized bamboo. He heated it slowly. He placed it carefully inside the glass bulb. He pumped out the air, so the filament would not burn too fast. He turned on the electricity, and the bulb glowed. Not for 1 second. Not for 1 minute. It glowed for 40 hours. It worked. Finally, the light bulb was born, and the world would never be the same again. More than just light. After his invention, Edison didn't rest. He worked on making the light bulb cheaper and easier to use in homes and streets. He also created a way to send electricity through wires, a system of switches and meters, electric power stations in cities. He didn't just invent a light bulb. He built the first electric system. He made it possible for every home to have light. Today, when you turn on a switch, when your room lights up, you're using an idea that Edison never gave up on. When I think about Edison trying again and again, for years, failing hundreds of times, I ask myself, why do I give up so fast? Why do I feel sad when I make one small mistake? Why do I think I'm not smart enough just because I don't understand something today? The truth is, learning takes time. even learning English, even learning anything in life. So now when I make a mistake, when I forget a word, when I don't understand a sentence, I remember Thomas Edison, and I say, this is not failure. This is just one way that doesn't work. Let me try again. And I hope you say the same. A lesson for all of us. Edison once said, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. That means, you don't need to be born a genius. You just need to work hard. And keep going. He didn't invent the light bulb in one night. He invented it by refusing to quit. And maybe that's the real light he gave us. The light of never giving up. So if you're learning English, if you're working hard, if you're tired but still trying, then you are already on the right path. Just like Edison was. By the time Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, he had already become a well-known inventor. But he didn't stop there. He never said, now I am successful. I can rest. No, he said, there's always more to discover, more to improve, more to build. That's why even after the light bulb, he went on to invent many more things that changed the world forever. One day while working in his lab, Edison had an idea. What if I could make a machine that could record sound and then play it back? At the time, no one thought that was possible. But Edison believed. So he started working. He used a metal cylinder, a needle, and a small horn. He shouted into the machine, Mary had a little lamb. Then he turned a handle. And the machine repeated his words like magic. It was the world's first phonograph. The first time a human voice had ever been recorded. People were shocked. They said, it's a miracle. Some even thought it was scary. But Edison just smiled. He knew this was only the beginning. Today we have music players, voice recorders, and phones. It all started with that simple machine. Edison didn't stop at sound. He started thinking about pictures. He asked himself, what if we could take many pictures, one after another, and show them fast enough to make it look like the people in the pictures are moving? And so he invented the kinetoscope, the first device that showed moving pictures. This was the birth of movies. Yes, the movies we watch today, on phones, on TV, in theaters, all of that started with Edison's camera and his big imagination. Edison was not just smart. He was different. Here are some things that made him stand out. He didn't sleep much. He often worked all night and only slept a few hours. He said, sleep is a waste of time. He didn't care about money. He earned a lot, but he spent it on his labs and projects. He said, money is just fuel to do more work. He loved mistakes. He believed each mistake was a step forward. He said, if you want to succeed, double your rate of failure. He was curious like a child. He kept asking questions until the end of his life. And do you know what else? He never acted like he knew everything. Even after becoming famous, he stayed humble. People often think great inventors stand on big stages, give speeches, or show off. But Edison was different. He didn't want attention. He wanted action. He said, the best thinking is done while working. He didn't sit and talk about big dreams. He went to his lab and built them. That's a lesson for all of us. Don't just dream. Do. When I think of how Thomas Edison lived his life, I think of what we are doing now. Learning English is not easy. Sometimes it feels slow. Sometimes we forget words. Sometimes people say, you'll never speak well. But like Edison said, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. So try again, read again, speak again, listen again. Don't worry if others are better or faster. You have your own path, just like Edison had his. You know, when I first heard Edison's story, I thought, he must have had a big team. He must have had great support. But then I learned, he started alone. He was a sick child. He was kicked out of school. He had hearing problems. He sold newspapers on a train. He studied on his own. And yet, he changed the world. So if you think you're too small, too weak, too late, think again. If you keep learning, if you keep going, you can also make a big difference. Even if it's just in your family. Even if it's in your village. Even if it's in your own heart. Thomas Edison grew old, but he never stopped working. Even in his 60s. Even in his 70s. Even when he couldn't hear. Even when his body was tired. His mind stayed young. He kept inventing. He kept building. He kept thinking. Why? Because he loved it. He didn't invent for fame. He didn't invent for money. He invented because he wanted to help people. He wanted to solve problems. He wanted to make life better. That was his true power. In the last years of his life, Edison became a symbol of American creativity and hard work. Leaders from around the world came to meet him. He worked with big names like Henry Ford, who built the first car factory, and Harvey Firestone, who made rubber tires. They even built vacation homes near each other, so they could think, talk, and share ideas. But even with all the success, Edison remained simple. He still wore plain clothes. He still walked through his labs. He still asked questions like a child. And he never said, "I know everything." In October 1931, at the age of 84, Thomas Edison took his final breath. The whole world mourned. For a moment of silence, cities across America turned off their electric lights, just for 1 minute, to honor the man who gave them light. Imagine that. The world turned dark for 1 minute, to thank the man who spent his life bringing light. When Edison died, he had over 1,000 patents, legal documents showing he created something new. He had invented the light bulb, the phonograph, the motion picture camera, electric systems, medical tools, and so much more. But even more than inventions, Edison left behind a spirit, a way of thinking, a message that says, never stop learning, never stop trying, and never believe the people who say you can't do it. When I think of Edison's life, I don't just see science. I see strength. He didn't have a rich family. He didn't go to a big school. He didn't speak loudly. He couldn't even hear well. But he had something powerful, the will to keep going. And that fire, that quiet, steady fire, it reminds me of my own journey. Because I also had moments when I felt slow. I also had people say, "You can't do it." I also made mistakes. I also wanted to quit. But I remembered Edison. And I kept going. And today, I'm telling you this story in English. Because I didn't give up. And you shouldn't either. If you're watching this video, if you're trying to learn English, if you feel like you're too late, too slow, too tired, then I want you to remember this. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be persistent. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to be curious. You don't need to learn fast. You just need to learn daily. Like Edison said, many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. So don't give up. Don't stop learning. Even if you don't understand every word, keep listening. Even if you forget a sentence, try again. Even if you speak slowly, speak anyway, because every step counts. And one day, your English will light up someone else's life, just like Edison's light lit up the world. So what can we learn from the story of Thomas Edison? That school is not the only place to learn. That failure is not the end, it's just a step. That slow progress is still progress. That ideas are born from hard work, not luck. That one person with one dream can change the whole world. And maybe that one person is you.